The year is 1718, London. A lawyer and writer named James Puckle leaves a complex technical drawing on the wooden desk of the English Patent Office. His design is neither an industrial machine nor an agricultural tool. It is a ballistic launcher with massive rotating cylinders mounted on a tripod stand. However, what makes Puckle's design one of the most bizarre objects in history is not its mechanics, but the theology he integrated into its engineering. This machine was designed to fire projectiles in different geometric shapes, depending on the enemy's religious belief. History tells us that the technology of consecutive and continuous firing was born in the muddy trenches of World War I. Documentaries, on the other hand, would have us believe that modern industry created these flawless mechanisms overnight. Yet the truth is hidden in smoky workshops and the secret arsenals of kings. For hundreds of years, engineers created mind-boggling, bizarre, and often designs more dangerous to the user than the target, all to harness the kinetic energy of gunpowder and create an unstoppable mechanical loop. Behold, 8 experimental designs that are the ancestors of modern ballistics, but were locked away on the dusty shelves of history due to their mechanical eccentricities. Puckle's rotating launcher. The year is 1718. This massive mechanism designed by James Puckle was the ancestor of the modern revolver system hundreds of years prior. Thanks to a cranked lever, the cylinder rotated, providing consecutive chemical ignition. But the real anomaly in the patent file was this. While Puckle envisioned using standard round kinetic masses for targets, he had designed a special cylinder that fired square-shaped cubes against enemies. His goal was for these non-aerodynamic square forms to inflict much heavier structural damage on the target. This bizarre fusion of engineering and religion never went into mass production due to the system's overly complex structure, remaining limited to only a few prototypes. Ribaudequin, 14th century Europe. During the Hundred Years' War, engineers mounted small-caliber iron pipes, lined up side by side onto a single wooden cart. It received this name because its appearance resembled a church organ. The firing mechanism was a single fuse chain lit from the center. When the system was triggered, an unstoppable chain reaction began, and the barrels detonated consecutively. However, since the physics of recoil were not yet fully understood, these massive vehicles tended to tear themselves apart with every firing cycle. The tremendous noise and wall of smoke it produced were incredibly effective psychologically, but its accuracy was entirely a game of chance. Nock Volley Gun, 1779, British Royal Navy. Designed by Henry Nock to keep enemies attempting to board ships away from the deck, this weapon consisted of a total of 7 pipes, arranged in a hexagonal shape around a central barrel. When the trigger was pulled, all 7 chambers underwent a chemical reaction simultaneously, a massive kinetic output in a single second. But there was a problem. Newton's law of action and reaction. The recoil of a simultaneous 7-chamber explosion would instantly break the collarbone and shoulder of the operator using the weapon. Even worse, when fired downwards from the ship's mast, the massive fireball erupting from the barrels would set the ship's own sails on fire. The design was swiftly erased from the naval inventory because it caused more physical harm to the user than to the target. The chamber system, 1792. Joseph Chambers decided to use chemistry instead of rotating mechanisms. In his design, there was a sequence of multiple gunpowder charges and projectiles stacked on top of each other inside a single long pipe. A special fuse, lit from the outside, ignited all the chambers sequentially, starting from the frontmost charge and working its way back. The system consisted of 7 pipes and could fire a total of 224 consecutive shots. However, there was a critical design flaw. Once the fuse was lit, there was absolutely no way to stop the mechanism until all the chambers were empty. If the operator fell, the device would spin around, continuing to fire 224 shots randomly in all directions. Uncontrollable power is no power at all. Belton's single pipe illusion. In 1777, Joseph Belton presented a unique prototype to the American Continental Congress. A mechanism capable of sending between 16 to 20 ballistic projectiles consecutively from a standard long barrel with a single pull of the trigger. It was similar to Chambers' idea, but it could be controlled by a trigger. The Congress initially liked this devastating technology and ordered 100 units. However, Belton's mechanism was so complex and so expensive to build according to the engineering standards of the time that the newly formed American government refused to cover the cost. Sometimes what erases a technology from history is not the enemy, but the budget itself. The Harmonica Gun, a bizarre concept tested in the mid-19th century by Jonathan Browning, the father of J.M. Browning and several other inventors. Instead of rotating cylinders, the ammunition was aligned inside a flat, horizontal steel block shaped like a harmonica. After each shot, this heavy metal block was manually shifted one notch to the side. The engineering worked on paper, but they had completely ignored biomechanics. A heavy metal block sliding sideways constantly altered the weapon's center of gravity. The device, balanced on the first shot, turned into an unbalanced piece of metal wanting to tip over to the right by the fifth shot. Because human anatomy and physical balance were disregarded, this bizarre idea was quickly abandoned. The Agar Coffee Mill 1861 American Civil War, a machine fed from a funnel-shaped top hopper and equipped with a hand-turned crank mechanism. It received this nickname because it looked exactly like a coffee grinder. President Abraham Lincoln watched the device in a demonstration and personally ordered its purchase. However, the generals on the front lines hated this mechanism. Why? The design consumed ammunition so rapidly that the horse-drawn supply chains of the era simply could not keep up with the pace. Furthermore, during continuous use, the steel heated up and expanded, locking the mechanism completely. Kinetic speed had been achieved, but thermodynamics and logistics were not yet ready for this speed. The Reffye Mitrailleuse, France in the 1870s, the most advanced, flawless 25-barreled, crank-operated mechanism of its time. Thanks to a special block attached to the rear, it could fire consecutively at an incredible speed. The French state was so afraid of this technology that they hid it even from their own soldiers. The mitrailleuse systems were transported under thick tarpaulins, and their operators were given zero practical training on how they worked. When the Franco-Prussian War broke out, French generals mistakenly deployed this infantry support weapon miles behind the front lines as a long-range artillery unit. Because of flawed strategy and overly paranoid secrecy policies, this perfectly functioning technology never got to show its true potential and was buried in the ironic pages of history. 8 bizarre designs, 8 mechanical dreams. For decades before modern industry discovered flawlessly working mechanisms, it relied on trial and error with these exact bizarre and dangerous devices. History usually only writes about the winners and the flawlessly functioning systems. Yet the true history of engineering is the very smoky trails left behind by these crazy experiments. Subscribe now and lock yourself into this mechanical archive. Then head down to the comments and choose your side. Which of these 8 bizarre designs do you think would have been the most unstoppable weapon of its era if its engineering limits had been overcome?